This is the Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail is a 2.5-mile trail that leads you through the city of Boston. It shows you all of the famous sites of the American Revolution, with experts at each site to tell you about each different location. The Freedom Trail is an actual line in the ground. It starts at the Boston Common and ends at the Bunker Hill Monument. Each stop on the Freedom Trail is run by an individual entity. At each site you will find a character that specializes on the particular location, and they will educate you on what took place at the site and why it is on the Freedom Trail. It was laid out in the 1950s in downtown Boston. The trail's purpose is to connect the historical sites in a modern city. The trail represents the freedom of the colonists from Great Britain. So come and experience all 16 sites for yourself. There are about 4 million people that come each year, so be one of those people. Each site is significant and revolutionary in its own way. All of these sites are great. However, the most revolutionary site is the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre happened because the Americans were being taxed without representation. These taxes were called the Townshend Acts. The colonists were taxed on their popular imported goods, such as paint, lead, paper, and tea. When the colonists met, they came to the conclusion that the solution was to boycott the British goods that were being taxed. The Sons of Liberty created a lot of propaganda to bias the colonists into disliking Great Britain. On March 5, 1770, a British soldier named Hugh White gets into a confrontation with a colonist and hits him in the head with the butt of a musket gun. Soon, a mob gathers at State Street, and there are British soldiers there. The mob was angry, and they started throwing bricks, rocks, and ice. Out of self-defense, the British soldiers fired back. There were 5 dead colonists. Among the deceased was a man named Crispus Attucks. He was a sailor, not much known about him, except for the fact that he led the colonists in the Boston Massacre. He was buried at Granville Burial Ground, which is located on the Freedom Trail. Here is a reenactment of what might have happened the night of the massacre. At the end of the shooting, 5 colonists lie dead, and it was dubbed as the Boston Massacre. The 8 British soldiers were put on trial for murder. Surprisingly, their defense attorney was John Adams, who was part of the Sons of Liberty, which was a group of violent protesters that strongly disliked the British. 6 of the soldiers were acquitted, and 2 were charged with manslaughter. Their punishment was the binding of their thumbs, so that they couldn't ever shoot a gun again. And it was because of the Boston Massacre that the Americans continued their trail to independence, which makes this site the most revolutionary. After the Boston Massacre, Paul Revere engraves a painting of what the Boston Massacre looked like. It was completely exaggerated to fire up the colonists and gives other colonists a false depiction of what took place in Boston, Massachusetts on March 5, 1770.